Tyler Goldstein asked me to make a video on the perks of being an officer in the Marine Corps. Really, he's coming from an enlisted Navy background, and he's going to be going to Marine OCS. So, Marine Corps wise, there's not a lot of differences between the officer and enlisted side. I kind of made a video on some of them before, but as far as perks go, you're going to notice a lot of differences on a ship, and then some of the differences in places that you're able to access on a base, and some other sort of just generalization things that I'll go over. So the first and the biggest being on a ship, right? So the gym on a ship always has weird hours. You're gonna have blue-green hours where Navy guys can use the gym or Marines can use the gym. And being an officer, the schedule always seems to work out in a way that you can get to the gym during those hours. On the enlisted side, not always so much. Part of that has to do with how the sort of chow hall or dining facilities on the ship are set up, right? So on the enlisted side, you get this giant line, the food quality isn't great, and you're basically eating like cafeteria style with hundreds of people all trying to scramble for food within a short window. The officer side, you have what's called the wardroom, and the line really only gets up to like 5 or 6 people ahead of you. You're not going to be spending a half hour in line for each meal. There's less people, so the ability to actually sit there, enjoy your food, have a conversation, it exists. And the food is typically slightly higher quality. Granted, it's all the same food being brought on the ship, they just try to reserve some of the better stuff for the wardroom officer side. On top of that, being on the ship, the conditions that you're like staying in or you're sleeping in, instead of getting a berthing area that has like hundreds of bunks with a shared bathroom for probably about 80 if the ship's full, you're gonna be in a stateroom you get has about 5 bunks, 5 or 6 depending on the size of it, and there's gonna be a little sink in there for you, and then the shared bathrooms are smaller overall, but there's not as many officers up there, so you don't have to deal with the mess of hundreds of people before you. Now, being off a ship, when you're on base, the officer club, it usually has some better views of wherever you're at. Like if you're out here in Hawaii, you've got a view of the ocean, and it sort of overlooks a golf course. It has its own private pool that all the officers can use. Some of them have different amenities, but the E-Club on the same base, you're looking at a parking lot out the window. So it's not necessarily like a giant difference between having your own space, but it is a better space to occupy. And when you go there for like food, when you think about the E-Club, it's typically something more like an Applebee's, and on the officer club side, it's more like Ruby Tuesdays or something like that. So a few generalizations that I haven't mentioned before. As an officer, when you're walking around, you really don't get stopped and asked weird questions by people. Like as a junior Marine, people would ask you things like, where are you going, what are you doing, and just sort of harass you throughout your workday, is a nice way to put it, or basically see if they can scoop you up to do something else other than what you're trying to get done. And I never really encountered that on the officer side. And the other thing with that is the ability to actually get things done throughout the day. Actually go somewhere and get done what you need done. So you go into Deers, right? And you want to get a new ID. So you're like, oh, my ID is going to expire in a week, or I got promoted, I should really get a new ID that reflects that. You walk into Deers and you're like, hey, I need a new ID. Now, if you're like Lance Corporal, they're going to tell you, okay, make an appointment, come back later, like we'll figure it out some other time. And they're probably just going to tell you to go away. On the officer side, they're literally going to have you come in, sign in, sit down, and they're going to find a way to fit you in. Now you might have to wait a little bit, but it's better than being told, oh yeah, you're going to have to go online and make an appointment and probably come back in a week, a month, whenever we have time. So yeah, those are some of the perks of being an officer that I haven't really talked about before. If this is what you're looking for, Tyler, let me know. If not, feel free to ask more questions in the comments, and I'll get back to you. Thanks.